Welcome everyone. This is our first Entrepreneurs Group video series. Today we've got the fantastic Jo Corbishley with us, who is a leadership specialist. I'm not going to say too much about Jo because I wanted to introduce herself, because obviously during lockdown everything has changed. We're all in a different mode. We're all thinking differently. So what I'll do is I'm just going to hand it over to Jo, let Jo explain who she is, what she does, and how this has changed. So thanks for doing this with us, Jo. Really appreciate it. Away you go.
Brilliant. Thank you, Keith. And it's lovely to be asked to come and do this actually, and to kind of share, I think, some of my experiences. So thank you for that. I hope everyone in the Entrepreneurs Group is staying safe. Can I just put that out there? It is a really difficult time at the moment. And I think one way leadership is, it's incredibly important, not just within organizations, but I think even from a personal point of view for our own leadership. I know myself, having left a full-time job just over a year ago now, and kind of, making that move into running my own business, has kind of come to this point where, literally kind of 6 weeks ago, I went from having some kind of income to no income whatsoever. So I think, from a personal leadership point of view, it's been almost a balancing moment around where you kind of think, look, from a leadership point of view, have I made the right decision? And I think it makes you question around yourself and around the decisions that you make. So it's been a really challenging time for myself, even as a leadership even as a leadership specialist, to be honest with you. So my background is in helping organizations and helping individuals in a number of different facets, really. I focus on 6 areas. I focus on identity, which I think, can I be honest with you, is incredibly important at the moment. If you think about it, over the last 6 weeks, Keith, we've got people who've gone from having steady jobs, stable jobs, stable income, to literally either being furloughed, right? Some people have just lost their jobs. Some people have lost their income. Some people have lost loved ones. So everything that we've seen also as well. I think the other aspect of this, and thinking about how the medium that we're using to communicate today, people have had to learn new skills, haven't they? So they've lost their identity from who they were and what they did, and they're now kind of having to learn new skills, new techniques really quickly. So I think identity is something that, as we come out of this, I think it's going to be incredibly important. I also look at kind of impact and how people can, how their identity can impact on their impact to deliver what it is that they're trying to do. So how they come across. We also look at 2 other aspects. We look at planning in terms of project management, because leaders they don't necessarily need to be project managers, but they need to have some awareness of project management. We look at business improvement, so improvement, because leaders also need an understanding of how they can improve things. Again, they might not necessarily need the skills themselves, the tools and techniques, but they need to have an awareness of that. So they can embed that in their processes. I look at influence, because I think influence as a leader is incredibly important. If you can't influence the individuals around you, then you're going to struggle to be a leader, or you're going to struggle to make changes within an organization. So they're the areas, they're the facets that I look at from a leadership aspect. I focus more, if I'm being honest, around identity recently. And I think that's because I've seen what's happened in the last 6 weeks, and I can identify really strongly with that. And probably something that you're aware of, Keith, that other people aren't, is because 5 years ago, I went through something similar. I found out from a personal point of view that I couldn't have children, and that made me question everything about myself. Literally, my life my world turned upside down, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So identity is a huge thing at the moment. It's something I'm kind of focusing on myself. So I'm pulling together programs at the moment I think from an identity point of view and a leadership point of view, we have many leaders who will come out of this situation and question, first of all, do they still want to be a leader, if I'm honest?
Yeah.
Do they have they might start to think about the ability to be a leader, because I think, again, we've taken some of these leaders out of their natural environment, working in offices, and we've put them into fixed environments at home, and perhaps they've seen a difference in their performance and the way that they've operated. So I think I'm working. I've got a program which looks at how we kind of take leaders from the environment that they've worked in to where they are now, and then reintegrating them back into the workplace, in a way that maximizes their performance. Because the reality is, certainly what I found, if I'm saying, in the as a part of that question in my own leadership, came around because I've gone from working with organisations and working in offices, which, if I'm honest, there were times where I found that necessarily, I've sometimes struggled with that a little bit, particularly around in huge groups.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I find is, naturally, I'm better with smaller groups of individuals because I like to interact more with individuals. But going through this process myself, this program that I've developed, and using a particular profiling tool, an I3 tool, is what I've realised is from a productivity point of view, I'm best suited to working in familiar environments with small groups of individuals, and that's where I'm more productive. So this program that I've developed basically uses a profiling tool, looks at the leader as an individual, looks at the traits that they've got, the things that they're really good at, and then, but more importantly, looks at the environment in which they thrive. So we might actually, what it'll do is it'll recognise that as we integrate individuals back into the business, actually having them put in a fixed office with a closed door actually doesn't serve their productivity. And they need to be closer to the teams.
Yes, so they're better in an open plan environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at the moment. But and the reason, kind of way, as I say, where I've looked at that is because the reality is, as I say, everything around kind of the way that I've worked has had to change. So the business that I had literally 9 months ago, where I've worked alongside yourself, where it was very face to face, has had to fundamentally change because of what we've gone through. So kind of I recognise, and I think one of the things that I've started to recognise is that, and I've heard a lot of people, because I think one of the things I've been frustrated about over the last few weeks is I've seen a lot of messaging out there from individuals saying, right, the programs that I've got, so I have a set of leadership programs, right, that I used to run 6 weeks ago, and I'm just going to put them online. And I'm kind of frustrated a little bit around that, because I think what I've started to realise is that actually, I'm going to use this word, which I think is being used a lot now, is yes, I do need to pivot my business, but I'm not going to pivot my business around the what, kind of around the leadership programs. I'm going to pivot my business very much around my why, which my why is helping people, helping organisations and helping leaders. So, which is why I've started to look at kind of what are the things that people will need when they come out of this, so that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment.
So sorry, Jo, what do you think leaders will need when they come? What do you think the difference is going to be now, being a leader at home and trying to coordinate all you guys at home to being, when you get back into the office, what do you think the mentality is going to be?
I think one of two things. I think there's a danger, right? Because I think the beauty of what's happened, if I'm honest, I think what the beauty of what's going to come out of this situation, if there is any beauty to come out of it, Keith, in fairness, given what some people have lost, I think there is some learning though that's come out of that, and I think what the learning will be is that actually we as individuals, right, can be taken away from our comfort zones, all right, and we can experience change, rapid change, all right, and we can survive, because guess what, we're human beings, and that's what we're to do. So I think that's the beauty. That's what has come out of that. I think what we need to do is to make sure that we don't lose that.
Yes.
So I think we've got one of two scenarios that's going to happen. We're going to get individuals who potentially will go back into the workplace and then potentially just operate the way that they used to do. And the shame about that is we'll lose that fluidity, that ability, that adaptability, that risk taking.
Yes.
That just, I'm going to go and do the best thing that I can here. I think we'll lose that. Or the second thing is, Keith, I think when we go back to the workplace, we're going to have leaders who are going to go, things need to be different.
Yes.
And because of their own personal experiences. So I think, and for me, those will be the leaders of teams and organizations, right, who I think will really thrive and will go on.
Yeah.
And I think, so for me, I think it's about working with the teams and recognizing that those individuals who try to go back to what used to be normal, whatever that looked like, and helping them to, I think, see the benefit of what's happened, of that opportunity that we were given, that wonderful, beautiful opportunity that we've been given, albeit hard opportunity that we've been given, and trying to, and trying to capitalize that, because the reality is, again, remember, is leaders, right, aren't just by themselves. Leaders have teams. So the difficulty that you've got is you're going to have people who are going to go back to the workplace with the rest of the team, and they're going to go, come on, this is perfect opportunity, let's crack on. And the teams are going to go, yep, we're up for it, let's go. But then you're going to have some leaders who are going to go back and go, I just don't want to, I want to go back to where it was, I want to go back to what we used to have. And then the teams are going to be going, nope.
Yeah.
We've seen what can be different, and we want something different. So I think for me, it's about managing those. It's about recognizing those, that diversity, and managing that diversity.
And expectation.
Absolutely. So I think it's going to be a really challenging time for leaders out there.
That brings me on to my next point, which you and I have done a few times now, which I love about the programs that you do, especially what you do for us, which is the challenging conversations, because there's going to be some challenging conversations that are going to be held like this, across laptops and computers. And then there's going to be challenging conversations when you get back into the workplace, where people, exactly what you've just described, some leaders are going to be all gung-ho, want to change, because it's, to me, it's like pressing the reset button. You've got a chance to press it now. It's like restarting your computer. You can start afresh. So what advice would you give to leaders on holding these challenging conversations across like laptops and computers, and when you get back in?
Because I think the terminology, I think when we do the program, Keith, I use this terminology, not my terminology, I have to say, hold my hands up, right. This was a term that was coined, a phrase that was coined by a gentleman from Cranford University, right, who kind of helped me to made me realize it's something called fierce conversations. And I think the fierceness about it, right, is it's the honesty. It's about, it's about making sure that your conversations are complete. So you don't leave anything out. It's about being honest. It's about coming from these conversations have to come from the heart in some sense, right? No agenda. It's about moving people forward, or moving situations forward. But I use a particular model. It's a model used by a gentleman or created by a guy called Sir John Whitmore. It's the GROW model. So GROW stands for, it's an acronym, it stands for goals, it stands for reality, it stands for options, and the W stands for what you will do. So it's a 4-step model. And basically you start off with having those challenging conversations, first of all and foremost, by setting out what is the goal that you're trying to achieve. Both of you have to, the important thing about that, remember, is both of you have to be involved in that. It's about, ultimately, right, when you're having a challenging conversations, because you want to move, maybe you want to impact on performance and you want to move things forward. So if the two of you are in that conversation, but you're the one who wants the goal, then you're not going to achieve it. So you have to set a goal for the two of you, which has to be, right, it has to be challenging, right, and it has to be, aspirational, right.
Yes.
Yes, it has to be smart, but more importantly, it has to be aspirational, and it has to be challenging. Then once you've established what that goal is, then it's about understanding, having that conversation with someone, saying, okay, so we know this is what our goal is, this is what we're striving to achieve. So what is the reality of that situation? So what do I mean by reality? I mean, what's the current situation? Are there any obstacles? Are there any things that are stopping us from being able to achieve that goal? And talking through what that situation is. It could be that people don't have resources. It could be it could even be that you've got individuals who are blocking, who are acting as blockers and preventing things from being able to move forward. It's understanding what the current situation is. The third step is to create a set of options. And that's the kind, so those options are around the kind of things that you can do. It's really important, though, can I say at this point, that depending on what that challenging conversation is, it's really important that whoever it is who's involved in that challenging conversation, right, takes ownership of what those options are.
Yeah.
Because it's because ultimately you want that person, right, to be able to move forward with those particular options, or with all of those options. So it's just about defining what kind of things can you do, what things will work, and what can you take forward. And then the final step is the will step, which is the last step, and that's that's about accountability. That's about the person saying, okay, this is what out of all the options, this is the one I'm going to do, and this is what this is how I'm going to take this forward. So the beauty about the grow model is, right, it gives you, it's kind of like cradle to grave. It gives you that complete conversation. So it's not a case of sometimes we'll go in and we'll have challenging conversations, and we'll be saying, oh, we want to do this, we want to do this, we want to do this, but then you get to the end of the conversation and nothing gets agreed, does it?
Yes.
So the beauty about the grow model, dead simple, 4 steps, and at the end of it you've got an agreement. You should have an agreement, right, where you can both move forward, where you can, you understand exactly what it is that you're going to do, and you've got accountability and agreement to do that. So that's the kind of the model that I use when I'm having challenging conversations with individuals, and I find it's quite effective, and dead simple to implement, to be honest with you. But again, really important that everyone's bought into that conversation.
And I think that's the thing. For me, what will be in your experience, will be the major thing that would go wrong? That could really throw it off. Would that be the leader not being sympathetic or empathetic to, the person who's having the conversation with, or vice versa?
I think, do you know what there's been a lot of kind of things going around. Do you know what I was going to say? I think there's a lot of things going around about this isn't #be kind to people, right? Yeah. And do you know what? I think, if I'm honest, I think my gut feel, right, is at this minute in time, right, it's about, I would rather say it's about be gentle with people, I think, actually, right? Because, the recognition, right, is that some of these challenging conversations, right, that you're going to have with individuals, right, some of these people, again, right, some of these people might have lost their jobs, right, or have been furloughed. Some people might have lost relatives, friends, family. So the reality is, it's about being honest and having an honest conversation, but recognizing that you need to be compassionate as well. Because and I think as long as that goal, remember, is challenging and aspiring, right, then it's you're not just, it's about it's about kind of trying to motivate people to want to kind of engage and to move forward. So but the other thing around that goal being inspiring and challenging, again, right, you don't have to go, as leaders, right, remember, it's not about perfection, right? It's about progress. So even if you move someone in a challenging conversation, right, your ultimate goal might be over here, even if you move someone from here to here, then they've made progress, right?
Yeah.
And you can't have a go at them, right? Or berate them for not making that leap, because some individuals cannot make that leap, and it would be inappropriate for us to ask them to make that leap. So the reality is, even if you move someone from here to here, right, then they've made progress, and that's what, and you should celebrate that, and they should celebrate that. So I think the key thing, the challenging thing, is making sure that your goals set at the right level, Keith. I think as a starting point. Secondly, and recognizing, understanding the environment around you having that conversation with that individual. So, being empathetic around what have they experienced, where are they in terms of themselves, and then because if you get that wrong, then the conversation's going to be probably very challenging.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, but more importantly as well, as a leader, right, do not jump in and give them solutions. Don't jump in and give them the options, right? They have to create those options, because they have to take ownership and then be held accountable to them. So I think goal setting, be careful about, think about the environment that you're conducting that conversation in, and the environment that person has come from, and then make sure that you don't, because it's dead natural for us leaders to kind of jump in, particularly if you're like me, like a solutions-based leader. You'll jump in and go, oh, we can do that. You're gonna have to sit on your hands and really have a think about that, really have a think about how you can stop yourself from doing that, and allow them, because the other thing as well, the thing about the grow model, right, is it's about listening to people. And I don't think as leaders sometimes we always take the time to listen to people. So it's really important that through that conversation that you listen to what people are saying to you. And can I say that to you, listening is not just with these, right? Listening is active listening, looking at the body, kind of looking at body language, looking at the way that they, almost kind of, sensing, just thinking more widely about what are the kind of things that they are demonstrating to me. Are they engaged in this, or are they just, are they not engaged? Yeah. So just mindful. So I think those are the things I would be mindful of when I'm having those challenging conversations.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. Well, I really do, because a lot of it sort of, I know with the guys I speak to, with what we do with entrepreneurs and startups and SMEs, larger organizations, as you know, I think one of the things for me is this is going to cause a real crossroads for a lot of people, and they're going to be sitting, listening and watching this and thinking, when I get back to work, things are going to have to change, and they will. But I think what people, and obviously jump in if you think I'm wrong, excuse me, is that they're going to have to give themselves time to come to terms with what's actually happened, and not just go back and be like a bull at the gate. You know what I mean?
And I think, again, something that me and you've touched on, Keith, right? The reality is that actually what people have, I believe, this is just my personal belief, is I believe that people have experienced grief. I think there, and we can, and I think I've kind of said this on social media a little bit around, we've seen some of the evidence of this, right? So, kind of, we've seen the denial where people are kind of going, this just isn't happening, this just isn't happening. I'm going to still continue to go out and talk to my friends and do what I want to do. We've seen anger where people are now kind of moved on into that, and they're angry about the situation. How has this happened? Who can I blame for this for happening? So people are going through that grief process, and it is a process. So depending on, the reality is, right, grieving takes it's a very individual emotion. And it takes people, it takes different people, different lengths of time to come to terms with that. So the reality is people will go back to work, and some of them, might still be kind of going through the anger process. Some people might be coming out the other side of the grief process, right, and be ready to move on, kind of, and to accept things. So I think it's we all need that time to grieve. The problem with grief is that there is no, in some sense, there's no start and end point just for individuals.
No.
It's different for it's different for everyone. So I think I think that, the reality is, as leaders, we need to be aware of that. I think, there's, and be able to recognize the symptom, kind of recognize when people aren't dealing with it very well. Because, with grief, sometimes the difficulty is you kind of get so far forward and you think, yeah, I'm doing fine, I'm doing absolutely brilliant, right, I'm coping with this, and then whack, something hits you and you go back to where you were. So, the reality is, some people will go back and will be quite fragile. Some people will go back and they'll be ready to move forward. We as leaders need to just be mindful of that and be cognizant of that. It happens, it'll be different for different people, and we need to manage differently. We need to lead differently, and we need to be gentle where it's appropriate, be challenging, and allow people to kind of really, to flourish. The other thing as well is allow people to be able to explore themselves, because I think there'll be a lot of people who go back to work who'll be kind of going, do you know what, I've been given loads of freedom while I've been at home, and I want to explore that in the workplace. So the last thing that we can do as leaders is kind of go, you mustn't do that, you mustn't do that. I think we need to play with our teams and say, come on then, let's see what you can do, but and be there to nurture and help them and guide them and support them. I think that's going to be really important when
I agree. I mean, you know me, I'm a big believer in one of the words I use a lot throughout our courses is permission, because I don't think people give themselves permission enough to do things or to explore things or challenge things. I think what tends to happen, and you see some of it now, especially on social media, where people have got a different opinion or a different outlook, and they're sort of chastised for it, pillarized for it, and that's where I think we can't go back to that. Everybody's got a voice. You've got to give yourself permission to use your voice and your thoughts and everything else that you've got.
It is, and I again, if it's okay, this is where Keith, one of the things that I've really found as part of my program, I've always looked at kind of personalities, right? I've always been really interested with personalities, and for me, this is where just recently I've done this kind of personality profiling using this particular tool, I3. And the beauty about what I like about it that's different to all of the other profiling tools, right, is that what it doesn't do, it doesn't norm people, right? It doesn't put them into buckets. It recognizes that as a person, you are completely and utterly individualistic, right? So the reality is that for our own personalities as well, even on top of the environment that's kind of impacted on us, we will go back into the workplace, right? And we will have people who will naturally, who will think differently to like what everyone else does. And I think and I've experienced that myself, where I've been I've been in an environment and working with teams where there's been times where I've thought, I just don't fit in here, and I don't, and I don't know why, I just don't fit in. I think what this profiling tool has kind of has helped me to do is to recognize that I am very different to individuals. I have a voice, and I have an opinion. It's not necessarily always right. It's not necessarily wrong, but it's who I am. And I think, for me, I think one of the things I think that organisations can benefit and individuals can benefit from is understanding why sometimes maybe you think you don't fit in, and it could be that in some teams you've got, you might have one person who kind of stands out like a kind of almost like a sore thumb, but the reality is that the likelihood is that they will have just very different gifts, I call them, to what the other people have. It doesn't make them the right fit, the wrong fit. It just makes them different. I always think that teams should embrace diversity, because I think the more diverse a team is, the more opportunities you can capitalize on. So I think I think for me it's about, when leaders go back, it's maybe this is an opportunity kind of to use your word, Keith, to reset, restart, and think, actually, right, who have I got in my team? what do they bring to that? What's the gifts? What's the diversity that they bring to that? And how can we use this perhaps more than we've done in the past? You know, I think for me, it's about that exploration. It's about, okay, let's, this person's always been very vocal. They've always been shut down. Let's give them a little bit of, let's listen to what they've got to say. Let's allow them to use that gift. And I think that from that, I think, teams can learn a lot from that and flourish from that, if I'm honest. That's my experience.
No, I totally agree. This is something that I could talk about forever and a day, you know that. But sadly, we've run out of time. So what I will say is thank you very much, Jo. Absolutely, thoroughly enjoyed it. Loved it. It's been absolutely brilliant. I'm sure you're going to get lots of comments and lots of requests. So anything that anybody wants to ask, just put it in the comments box, or get in touch with Jo or I, just private messages or whatever. But again, thank you very much, Jo. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith. It's been a pleasure. I hope everyone at the Entrepreneurs Group stays safe and well. And I wish you the very best of luck for this. Stay safe for the next couple of weeks while we're in lockdown. But after that, really start thinking about yourself and your teams. And this is, I really think it's an opportunity for you to really capitalise now. I really do think that. So stay safe, everyone.